Hello. Let's study for the quadratics practice test. So I'm going to give you sort of one type of every problem that you'll probably see, and then hopefully this helps you kind of review. So the first thing, you need to know a couple formulas. You should know the discriminant is the part underneath the square root, b squared minus 4ac. It's the part underneath the square root of the quadratic formula. So the whole quadratic formula is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of, and then that's called the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you need to know the quadratic formula, that's the whole formula, and then you need to know that this part of it, just the part underneath the square root, is called the discriminant. And that helps you determine sort of what's going to happen. So I think we'll do one of those now. Use the discriminant to determine how many solutions there are. So remember, this is your a term, this is your b term, and this is your c term. It needs to equal 0 before you do anything, and the formula is b squared minus 4ac. So here, b would be negative 12 minus 4, a is 4, and c is 9. So you can use your calculator here, figure out sort of the discriminant value. This is negative 12, that's not a 12, squared minus 4a c. Man, this thing is double tap. 4ac. So you get 0? Okay, 0. You're like, so what? What does that mean? The discriminant is 0? Okay, well, let me remind you what that means. The discriminant is telling you what's going to happen as far as how many solutions you're going to get. It also tells you if it's factorable. So there's three things that can happen. If you have a quadratic, you can have two solutions, 1, 2. You can have one solution, or you can have no solutions. And when I say solutions, I'm saying x-intercepts. The discriminant tells you which of these scenarios it is. If the discriminant is positive, then you'll have two solutions. If the discriminant is 0, you will have one solution. And if the discriminant is negative, there will be no solutions. So in this problem, since the discriminant is 0, that's this case, that means the vertex is on the x-axis, there is one solution. So it's either positive, 0, or negative, and depending on what it is, you know what the graph's going to look like, how many solutions there will be, how many x-intercepts there will be. Identify the value that makes a perfect square. So I'm trying to figure out what I would put there to make this a perfect square. Now, when I do these, I like to draw the picture, so I'll just kind of sketch it out and say, I'm asking you what the corner is. If you're going to complete the square, I want to know what the corner is. So I'm going to take this and say, okay, it's x, and it's always half of 14, so x plus 7. This would be x plus 7. And what I want to know is, what's the area of this? Well, if it's 7 by 7, then it's 49. That means you would write x squared plus 14x plus 49. So c would be 49. And when we say perfect square, we mean that this is now factorable as something squared. And if you remember when you complete the square, it's this, x plus 7, x plus 7. So x plus 7 squared is the factored form. Now, all I'm asking you to do is tell me c, but that's kind of where we're going with this. Now, we're going to solve by completing the square. So we're going to do the same thing, but we need to solve the equations. We've got to keep going. Now, when you do this, I like to set it up by leaving myself a little blank. Before you do anything, you need to make sure you have your x's on one side and everything else on the other side. So you might have to move some stuff around. In this problem, you don't have to move anything around. You get your x's on one side, you got negative 9 on the other. I know I'm going to complete the square, which I'll kind of sketch my picture. This won't be nearly as nice as the other one I did. Okay, there you go. It's always x, and it's always half of b, so that would be negative 5, and that means the dimensions of this square are x minus 5, x minus 5. The corner of the square, 5 by 5, is 25. So I'm going to add 25 to both sides. Once you do that, now you can factor, and that's what I was kind of doing here. It was x plus 7 squared. Well, here it's x minus 5 squared. So x minus 5 squared equals 25 minus 9 is 16. You might remember from your Khan Academy exercises, you had to convert it to this form, and then the next thing you had to do was actually solve it. So to undo squaring it, you're going to square root both sides. And on the left side, that gives you x minus 5. On the right side, the square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. And you need to have both because there are two answers. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add 5 to both sides, and it's kind of important how you write this. I'm going to say x equals positive 5 plus or minus 4. If you don't like that, you can split it up to this, x equals 5 plus 4 or x equals 5 minus 4. Either way, it's just a notation thing. It's like if you don't like this plus or minus, then split it up and now add them up. 5 plus 4 is 9, 5 minus 4 is 1. So the two answers are 9 and 1. One more, quadratic formula. So to do the quadratic formula, it first needs to equal 0, which means I need to subtract 15 on both sides. Now I have 4x squared plus 7x minus 15 equals 0. And now I'm going to go through the quadratic formula. When I do that, I like to do the discriminant first. So let me remind you the formula. Over 2a. I like to do this part first, so I'll do that first. I'll find the discriminant. So 7 squared minus 4ac. So we'll do 7 squared, and I like to do the parentheses, it keeps me out of trouble. Minus 4ac. 289. So this is 289. So now when I write the formula, I just know I'll put the square root of 289 in there. The opposite of b, the opposite of 7 is negative 7 plus or minus the square root of. I just did that part. It's 289 over 2a. 2a, 2 times 4 is 8. And you probably want to do that part in your head because if you don't, it's easy to mess up the order of operations. But now I'm going to type this whole thing in on my calculator. I just have to do it twice. So I'm going to say negative 7 plus the square root of 289. That's not a 9. And I'll hit enter, and I'm going to divide by 8. When you do this, it's very easy to type it in wrong. You got to make sure that you find the numerator because order of operations would divide before it would add. So you make sure you hit enter after you type the numerator in. Negative 7 plus radical 289 is 10. Then you get 1.25. That means one of your answers is 1.25. Or we're going to do the same thing, but with a minus. So negative 7 minus 289. And then we'll hit enter and divide that by 8. And the other answer is negative 3. So x either equals 1.25 or x equals negative 3. So that's already your crash course. If you can do all that, you're in good shape. So good luck.